Hey everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. So, this is world history and this is the start of Unit 1. So, the way this is going to work is I'm going to go through and I'm going to teach this just like I would in class. When we get to questions, you need to be answering those in complete sentences as we go through, and that's what you're going to be submitting every day. We'll be talking about them. Don't be waiting for me to get to the question, even though the questions are going to be here in the discussion. A lot of times those are answered before I actually get there, so you need to go ahead and look at your worksheet, know what the question is, and then be ready to answer it. But today, since this is most likely your first day, I will go through and make it very straightforward for you, so you know exactly what you need to do on this part of the lesson to have it work out. All right. So, being the beginning of world history, we're going to start with the beginning of man, the existence of man. So let me make myself a little smaller here. Get myself out of the way. All right, there we go. A little bigger so you can see me a little better. All right, so, and as always, if you feel like I'm going too fast on something or you're trying to answer a question and I'm still talking because this is a video, unlike class, where you could raise your hand and stop me, here you can actually just pause me. So if you need more time on something, pause. If you miss something, that's fine. You can go back and look at it again. So there are benefits to this. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the very beginning of time of humans, of where humans came from. A lot of this course is going to be focused on much more present day. That's just how it's set up. So the first unit, we're going to cover like millions of years. So, and then each successive unit, we cover a much smaller period of time until we get to a much more detailed current event things that happen in present day. So what we're going to be talking about today is how humans developed over time to get to the necessity for history. A lot of cool stuff to talk about in this unit. So the evolution of man. Now, whenever you see these words underlined, those are vocabulary words. There is a Quizlet that is associated with all of these that have those words in the definitions that also help you study by. All right, so there are, well, let's just start here at the beginning. The Australopithecines. They're the oldest, and they lived in Africa possibly 7 million years ago. Let me show you a picture. All right. This is a very famous skeleton. This is a real skeleton. All right. This is known as Lucy. So, archaeologists have uncovered this skeleton and realized this is the most humanoid type creature that they found, and they can tell by the bones that it is 7 million years old. So they know humanoid creatures of some sort lived 7 million years ago. So humans evolved over time. Now, in U.S. history, we talk about the Scopes trial where people get upset because they feel like somehow evolution is a controversial thing, or they did in the 1920s at least. It's really not. And let me clarify here as we talk about evolution. Humans did not evolve from apes or monkeys or anything like that. That's not how it happened. It wasn't like there were chimpanzees and then they gradually had kids that turned into humans and then they're still chimpanzees. Chimpanzees also evolved. So millions of years ago, the creatures on Earth were very different and they evolved over time to adapt. It takes a very long time. One group doesn't evolve and then the other group doesn't evolve. Sometimes they break off into two versions, and we'll talk about Homo sapiens and Neanderthals here in a second, but everything evolved over time. Man did not evolve from ape. The people get that because there are correlations between our DNA, but humans also share like 98% DNA with pigs, I believe, or some ridiculous number. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. All right. But Lucy, this is the oldest possible thing that we have present day to show you how old humans could be. After Lucy, and we just call her Lucy. Somebody found the bones like, we're going to call this Lucy. I think she's I believe she's the only Australopithecines that we have found. We are confident that they existed, but this is the only Australopithecines that we have found. Over millions of years from there, whatever Lucy was, her humanoid type creature, evolved into a creature that looks more like this. This is Homo habilis. Homo habilis, what that means is habilis means handyman. All right. So we realize the difference in him and what Lucy was is they start using tools. More advanced creatures, they're starting to use tools as opposed to just using their hands and like chasing things down in the woods. After Homo habilis for millions of years, this dude, we'll call him George, right? Oh, George here, he evolved into Homo erectus, all right? So Homo erectus means that they stand up. No giggling. I can hear you giggling at home. Homo erectus means that they stand up on 2 feet. They're still using tools, so they haven't given up anything from Homo habilis. But when they become Homo erectus, they stand up on 2 feet. If you can see the picture here, we'll call him Joey. Right? Oh, Joey looks more human-like, right, than what George did, and definitely from what Lucy probably looked like. So it was Homo erectus, and then a huge change happens from Homo erectus. Homo erectus is going to evolve in 2 different categories, all right, into Homo sapiens, all right? So Homo sapiens is what we are today, but there's 2 different versions of it. There's going to be the regular Homo sapiens, and then the Neanderthals is what we call them, all right? I got a picture here. Let me move this on over. This is the human lineage. Move myself over. Homo sapiens. This is us. He's got some beautiful hair here. And this is supposed to be the Neanderthal. So this is what they think Lucy looked like. This is George. I don't understand why George would have been shorter than Lucy, but okay. Homo erectus is taller and is starting to look more human-like. Then when Homo erectus here, Joey, decides to evolve, all right, and it's all gradual. It wasn't like instantaneous. It's not like his kids came out looking completely different. This was evolved over millions of years as they adapted better to their society. So Homo erectus break off into Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Now there's a big difference in them. So Homo sapiens, by all accounts, should not survive, like just based on the laws of nature. They not only are they not hairy enough, I don't know if hair has anything to do with survival. They're slow, they're weak, they're more susceptible to extreme temperatures. There's all these things with the Homo sapiens that you'd be like, oh, they'll never make it. But that's what we are. The Neanderthals, all right, they came out, they're stronger, they're faster, they're more aggressive, they're more resistant to the weather. So you would think nature would think the Neanderthals will win. The Homo sapiens are going to absolutely destroy the Neanderthals as far as an evolutionary situation takes place. So as I'm getting ready to explain this, notice that the question that you're getting ready to have is, why did modern man end up outlasting the Neanderthals, and what did they do better and how? You need to answer that in complete sentences, all right? So I'll go back and I'll talk about this, but always know what that question is coming up so that you can answer it as I'm talking about it, because I'm not always going to, like when I get to the question, I'll put the questions in here a lot of times for me as I go through to make sure that I have talked about it before I move on. But if I sit here and talk about it on a picture and I get to the question, I'm going to be like, yep, I'm good. I'm not going to talk about it again because I already covered it. That's more of a pacing thing for me to make sure I've done it, and that you know when you see that question that you need to have it answered. If you get to a question and you haven't answered it and I start talking about something else, you're like, I didn't write it down. Pause me, and it'll work out fine. All right. So here's how the Homo sapiens were able to outlast the Neanderthals. Homo sapiens are a lot smarter. All right. They said, hey, I don't want to freeze to death. Let's get animal skin. Hey, let's build a fire. Hey, let's do this, let's do that. Neanderthals had to still go chase down deer and stuff. Homo sapiens, they'd come up with a plan. They'd be organized. They're going to start having some spoken language. They were just so much smarter. It made them more capable of adapting to their environment. And when they're both after the same food source, Well, yeah, in a fist fight, you don't want to fight this guy, all right? But if he don't have any food because the Homo sapiens have already taken all the food, it's going to eliminate him, and that's what happens. So we know Neanderthals existed, but they're a different species of humans, and they just don't last because they can't compete with Homo sapiens, who are so much smarter. That is what makes humans so much more advanced in the wild than the other animals, is the intelligence level and the way to be able to problem solve. It is a innate ability of humans that is vastly superior to any other animals or creatures. One of the big reasons we don't have any natural predators. But so humans are able to problem solve so much better than any of the other groups. All right. So that was number one. Make sure you answer that in complete sentences, and then we'll just move on to the next one. All right. So like right now we're getting ready to talk about nomadic lifestyle. Going back to the process here. If you look at your notes, you'll see that question number 2 down here is, how do we know that ancient nomads believed in an afterlife? What was the original purpose of humans being able to talk? Well, we haven't talked about any of that. That's what we're getting ready to talk about here. So it's always good to look at that question as we go on to the next thing, so you know what to listen for and you can be answering it while I talk. But again, if you always need more time, I'm always pausable. All right. So nomadic lifestyle. So for millions of years, for 2 million, we have Homo sapiens, humans are out for 2 million years. The vast majority of the existence of humans, we didn't have cities. We didn't have houses. We didn't have anything. For the vast majority, like 95% of our existence, and I say 95%, we're looking at probably 99% of our existence. 99.99999% of our existence if you're counting the evolution from Lucy on. We were nomads. We didn't farm. We didn't know how to farm. We just wandered around and looked for food. That's all we did all day. Your family wakes up and you just go wander in the countryside looking for food, find food, you eat, go to sleep, wake up the next day, do it again. That's what nomads did. It was very, very successful for a long time. You can sustain life, nomads. Not a ton of life, but there's always enough in a nomadic society for the species to continue, which is what humans really did for a long time. So they even learned how to travel across water. I mean, there's very few animals that can build a boat. And by a few, I mean none, other than humans if you classify us as animals. So believed in an afterlife because they're often buried with their tools and belongings. Before I get to that, and I start talking about it, I want to talk about how they hunted, and this is really, really cool. So nomads, they wake up and like, I'm hungry. I want to eat that elk over there. Now, they didn't have horses or anything like that. They had no domesticated animals. That doesn't come out until the farming evolution happens, that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So how do, just like cavemen, Homo sapiens, how are they going to catch that elk out there just looking at them like, all right? They have a spear. No bow and arrow, just a spear. I need to stab that thing. Well, an elk is really fast. So here's how Homo sapiens are incredibly good hunters, all right? And there's still places on Earth, I'm sure, that tribes that still use this, but this has worked for millions of years. So if you notice humans, we stand on 2 legs. They're going, duh, Mr. Wagstaff. Well, that's beneficial because what we do is when we walk, it's a pendulum motion with our hips. We use very little energy when we walk. We just lean forward and fall forward and our legs just catches, all right? We use very little energy. Because of that, our lack of energy use, we're very energy efficient. We only sleep like 8 hours a day, and we can go on less than that. Any of y'all got a house cat at home? How often does that thing sleep? All the time. But it's incredibly athletic, and it's explosive, unless you have a cat like mine that's completely useless. It can be very explosive. So cats have to save a whole bunch of energy because they use it really fast. They're not energy efficient. So very few animals are energy efficient, so they have to rest all the time so that they can keep all that energy to run away from predators. So what Homo sapiens do is we see that elk up on the hill, we just start walking towards it. When you get close to that elk, guess what's going to happen? It's going to run away. Runs away. Homo sapiens, know what we do? Just walk towards it some more. We get closer to it. It's like, why are you coming? It just runs away. And we just keep following it. Just keep walking towards it. Eventually, hours and hours later, after like 5 hours of walking towards it, you know what that elk's going to do? It's going to pass out. Gets exhausted. It can't stop. And it passes out. And the Homo sapiens walk right up to it and stink. Dinner. That is how Homo sapiens survived. Is we're extremely energy efficient. We're not going to chase down an elk. But the fact that we just never stop, that is absolutely beneficial. Now, so this is why we were able to live for millions of years. We can go catch that elk. However, if there's only 3 elk out there, and you have a village of 5,000, they ain't all going to eat. Eventually, they're going to starve to death. Because of that, the population on Earth never got very high with nomads. You just could not feed enough people in hunting and gathering. There is a scarcity of food. It means a shortage of food, always with nomads. So while there was always food there was never enough to really grow the population. All right. So for millions of years, life just didn't change. People couldn't have a whole bunch of kids because you couldn't feed them. All right. So not only that, as far as these questions go, because we'll come back to that in a little bit. So nomads, we know they believe in an afterlife. That's another unique thing. In the next unit, we're going to talk very heavily about religion and organized religion. We'll talk a little bit about it this unit, but mostly next unit. Organized religion is incredibly important to humans. All right. We learned even from Homo sapiens, basically caveman times, right, that they all believed in an afterlife. We know that, which shows that humans naturally believe that there's a higher power, there's something after them. We know that they believed in an afterlife and that there was some type of God or something like that because they were buried with their tools. All right. When the nomads were buried with their tools, now these are very, very difficult tools to make and very useful. So when somebody dies, you think their family would get those tools because they can use it. Nope. They would bury it with the nomads so that the nomads could use them in the afterlife. That's how we know that they believed in an afterlife, because why else would you bury them with their tools if they weren't, unless they were expecting to use them again? All right. So we know that the nomads believe in an afterlife, which shows that religion and this belief in a higher power is an innate part of human nature, which is incredibly important as we go through world history and talk about all the benefits. But usually in world history, it leads to wars and a lot of consequences of organized religion, not spirituality, but the actual organized religion itself, which your natural spirituality pushes people towards. So there's a belief in the afterlife, and they're buried with their tools and belongings. There's another thing. So Homo sapiens learn how to talk. Other animals, I mean, there's like dolphins that they can communicate, but we humans ended up finding a way of communicating. We had to do it verbally with a language, and probably each tribe had their own language. It is extremely important when you're hunting. If you're hunting that elk, all right, it is very important to be able to talk, to be able to coordinate. Hey, you go around the side of that hill. I'm going to go around the side of this hill, and we're going to meet in the back. All right. You had to be able to communicate, and they did it verbally so that they could better hunt. If you couldn't have 15, 20 guys out trying to hunt down a few elk and exhaust them to death, then you're not going to eat. And so they had to be able to communicate, to get on the same page, to have a plan. So the importance of being able to talk with the nomads is in the hunt. So I got these are cave paintings, but just a lot of it just shows what they hunted, how they hunted, what they valued in life. So the cave paintings, which is crazy that they existed millions of years ago, they still exist today, is absolutely awesome and really gives us an insight into their lives. So, like, the question here is, how do we know that ancient nomads believed in an afterlife? Well, we had talked about that when we discussed them being buried with their tools. And then what was the original purpose of humans being able to talk? Is that we were able to, they need to be able to talk in order to hunt. You need to answer those in complete sentences, all right? And it needs to be answered completely. So again, I'm not always going to stop here and go over these questions, because what has happened, and I have learned, is if I do that and I stop here every time, students start skipping over what I'm actually teaching and just come to the question to answer it here and then move on and try to finish it too quickly. So I purposely will not stop and go over all these, but I will keep the questions in here just so that we're all on the same page of what we're going through. And again, we get to the questions and you have an answer like, oh my gosh, don't go on. Pause me. All right, farming. So farming, like 12,000 years ago, this is huge. This is the biggest change in human existence. There is no recorded history. There's nothing up until 12,000 years ago. All of a sudden, people were like, wait a minute. If I have a male elk and a female elk, and they make elk babies, what if I just like kept those two elks, they had babies, and then I just ate their kids over and over? I wouldn't have to go hunt anywhere. That'd be easy. Hey, what if instead of going to try to find all the berries in the woods, I just like plant some stuff here and have it grow? And so I got my elks here and I got my berries here and I got... Why are we walking around so much? Fundamental change in the history of everything that we know. All right. This leads to farming. All of a sudden, you can have as many elk as you want. All right. You have as many pigs as you want. You find a male and female of a species, you can have as many as you want and you can eat them. All right. You can domesticate animals. You can grow all types of crops, potatoes, all types of stuff. All right. Depending on where you are on Earth, you can grow things. All of a sudden, the reason the population on Earth had never really grown, all right, is because there's never enough food. All of a sudden, there's plenty of food. Now, if you're a farmer, there's a few things that they're going to have to figure out, like that you have to be near fresh water. That is an absolute requirement. This is just a random picture. It could be anything, but this might be what some of the first farms look like. You'd have a fresh water supply for drinking and for irrigating your crops. You would have, little pens here, probably for some type of animals that you're trying to keep in there. That they'd be growing something somewhere around here for sure. But all of a sudden, when there's no longer a scarcity of food and you have plenty of food, the population is going to grow. So instead of having 2-3 houses here, you're going to have 10 houses, 15 houses, 300 houses. So nomads, they traveled in small groups. All of a sudden, when you start farming, you're going to start getting like civilizations, right? And people that have to work together. And you can't just run away from them because you like live here permanently. So there has to start being rules and structures into society. All of this stuff is going to be new. And that's really a lot of what we're going to pick up with on tomorrow, is the growth of population. But the biggest difference of being a nomad and a farmer is a nomad just wanders around. He just goes from place to place, just looking for enough food to survive that day. A farmer, all right, stays in one location, is able to mass produce food. The biggest benefit to being a farmer is the fact that there's no food shortage. You can have as much food as you want when you want it, and there are no problems with it. Absolutely incredibly valuable change in human evolution is the transition from being a nomad to people being a farmers. And it was like, once people realized that you could farm, it's a game changer. Almost everybody did it, and you're going to really get like the beginning of history and people trying to figure out, how do we actually live with other people? If we don't just deal every single day with every one of us trying to go out and catch as many elk as possible, what is life like now? And that's a lot of what we'll pick up at tomorrow. All right, so the final question is, what is the difference between being a nomad and being a farmer? And what is the benefit of being a farmer? We already talked about that. So that is it, and we're going to be done today. All right, you guys just go on to the next part of the lesson.